Hello and welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem alongside me, one of the comedy cellar and good friend Noam Dworman. Hello, Noam.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you, man. Um,
I could try
this is
this.
there
No,
you
no.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, but you might see my son's hand pop through. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So this is one of the episodes I'm really looking forward to because the guest is kind of like the friend that you want to have. He knows and can have a great discussion about a lot of topics. You'll never get bored. That's why I'm so excited to have him. And if you're on social media and anything, you will know who he is. So we are so divided in this politically and socially, not only in this podcast, but in the nation, in the country, in the world, everything is divided. And to understand that, we need to understand the society, the human behavior, uh, sociology. And that's why we have the one and only Dr. Sam Richards. He is an award winning sociologist, speaker, and teaching professor at Penn State University and distinguished professor at Konkuk University in Seoul, Korea. His class, Sociology 119 course, is the largest race, ethnicity, and cultural relations course in the world, and was subject to an Emmy Award winning television podcast called "You Cannot Say That."
Wow.
His videos granted over 400 million views, and his class is the most widely recognized classroom in the world, arguing that empathy is the core of sociology. Uh, his radical experiment in empathy is one of the most widely viewed TEDx talks, and he's here tonight. Hello, Sam.
How are you all? How are you both? And I'm not sure that I live up to those, any accolades but I'll do my best.
We'll be the judge of that.
All right. All right. And be tough judges too. Yeah.
Well, good to have you. Thank you for being here. You do. I see you like all over the social media, TikTok, YouTube, and all. You always talk about so different topics, and you know, uh, and if we want to understand, what is the role of sociology to understand and addressing like why we so divided in many ways, and people now not only divided but want you to be divided. Like if you don't take like a side, there's a problem. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about Gaza, Israel war,
Mhm.
not that, not only that, Trump, Biden, everything pretty much.
Yeah. 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 Everybody has an opinion. Well, like the web and the media and social media and so on offers everybody the opportunity to voice their opinions. And I think back to when I was an undergraduate, I had nowhere except, my friend group, or maybe if I was out to dinner with somebody or at a picnic or a party or who knows, a classroom where I would raise my hand. But otherwise, I had nowhere to voice my opinions. And so I wasn't very opinionated. In a way, I didn't learn to be very opinionated and to think that it mattered. But now people have the ability to do that. And I think it's just sociologically speaking, we've created many platforms in which people can kind of put their thoughts out there, and then they kind of get used to doing that. And once you do that, you just start coming up against other thoughts. And so I think it sounds like people are far more opinionated than they are if you're paying attention to social media, right? So it appears that way, but actually, when you talk to people, if you watch my class and my videos, excuse me, these are the same students that they're actually pretty thoughtful and they're not filled with many opinions.
Mm.
But I can guarantee, and they're probably like that when they're in groups of people, even with their friends. So not much different than I was. Well, if they're on social media, it's more likely they'll just sort of put a random thought out there, and it sounds very opinionated and then
Yeah.
divided and so on. So
I agree with you, and I think a lot of times, not to take away from people, that I think people should be active and social and share their opinion and stuff on social media. But I think when you post something and you have a lot of likes, a lot of followers, and you be like, then you take that route, But a lot of them don't understand the actual situation to have an opinion.
yeah,
Like we used to be
yeah,
able to form an opinion based on what we learn or study or research. Now you place your opinion and then search for somebody who's going to back you up, and you will find them because there's so many
Yeah.
people. Expert is so does that, in your opinion, make the society like worse because people don't really understand the conflicts, but they place their opinion, versus if they do understand it, they'll be more
Yeah.
passionate about it?
Yeah. Hey, I love this conversation. Um, Already, right? Like my mind is just,
And
firing.
Noam didn't even jump in yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm waiting for that. You know, I think back to, okay, when I was young, right? So, um, I, I didn't, I didn't understand the world very well. And I didn't have anywhere to put opinions out there. And so I didn't, right? And even if I did understand the world, I didn't have anywhere to sort of put my thoughts out, right? Well, now we do. We have all these places that we can weigh in on something. Now, I would have weighed in when I was 18 or 20 years old. I would have weighed in on all sorts of things that I knew nothing about, but I had nowhere to do that, right? And so, uh, but now there's just so many opportunities to jump in somewhere. I can do it like I can watch a video and do a thumbs up, a like, a dislike, whatever that might be, or just make a very quick comment on it, and know nothing about it. And I think that's a lot of what's happening. And so most of what we see in social media, and most of what we see in this activism around us, the activism in lots of different ways, right? I think we really should just ignore, because it's people just sort of randomly throwing thought unreflective thoughts. Yeah, I think that I mean I feel like I'm trying to be really positive about this, but the truth is I am really positive about it, and so I ignore most things. And so, but the negative side is, because of this, even though we're really not that divided, okay, but we think that we are, and there's a narrative that we are, and that narrative then becomes very, very dangerous. And if we're paying attention to social media, it certainly appears as though we're far more divided than we are. And just if we believe it's real, then it's real in its consequences. That's a really important dictum in the field of sociology. Yeah.
Well, how is it dangerous? Well, I mean, I was comment on something, then get your answer. So there seems to be a cycle here because the politicians are affected by Twitter also.
Mhm.
And quite often you see them both on the left and right taking harder line positions than the polls actually show would be the
Yeah.
sweet spot of politics.
Yep.
Roy Teixeira, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, did a whole article about this, how the normies view things and how nevertheless the two parties take more extreme positions. And I believe that's because they are affected by what they see on Twitter. I had one or two bad periods where I was getting attacked on Twitter, and it really did feel like the entire world was coming down on me. So I don't
Yeah,
understand
sorry
how
about that,
works.
my friends. Yeah, my friends.
Yeah.
Was
So it's like a
was that
vicious cycle.
Hatem doing
Yeah,
the attacking?
me and my friends.
Yeah.
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 So is that correct? What I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's quite correct. I mean, I think this is the unfortunate thing, right? Like, leaders and politicians or people, or even people like the three of us, we feel, if we don't really understand what's going on, then we feel like we have to jump in, and we're following Twitter, let's say, thinking or something like social media, thinking that's actually the pulse of our constituents or our followers, when in fact it's really not the pulse of the constituents or followers. And so when we jump out thinking that we're pursuing what people want, we're really missing the point. But that's what happens, and that's the dangerous side of it. So everybody is just getting more extreme, not realizing that nobody's really very extreme. They're really not. And even the people who appear the most extreme, when you sit them down, like the extreme Trump. Let me go with this for a second. The extreme Trump people, the extreme Biden people. If you sit them down, the vast majority are quite reasonable.
Yes.
Not the 1% that's just like has lost their damn minds, but the vast majority are quite reasonable.
Noam said this in this podcast for years, and this is one of the things that we always agree is like when you label, like let's talk about Trump Biden because that's one of the division, when you label everyone in Trump campaign as crazy or racist or this, or everybody in the Biden campaign as a woke or the, you cannot do this. And Noam, you speak on this better. Is like you have to find the truth. When you he said one time when you tell when you tell people that Trump cannot read, this is a lie. Like people can, what I'm saying? It's
That was
just like,
Rick Wilson. He came on the show and said, "But Trump can't even read." I'm like, dude, come on. Like you
Yeah.
had me, but when you start saying stuff like that, it just everything you
No.
say becomes suspect to me because I
Yes.
believe the man can read. As awful as he is, I think he can read.
Yeah.
but
And people say, oh, he's a terrible businessman because he's every business he's ever started, he's lost money and so on. Obviously, he's not a terrible businessman. If
not.
he was, we wouldn't know who he is.
you know what's funny? I
Right.
always compare Trump to the Knicks because people always say the Knicks sucks. The Knicks, one of the most successful financial organizations ever. They make so much money,
Yeah.
more than any
Yeah.
NBA team, just because. So they no, they don't suck. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
No, I saw that. There's a thing going around now. It was who's the documentary filmmaker?
Michael
Who?
Moore.
No. The PBS guy who made Civil War and all of
Oh,
this.
I only watch
Ken Burns.
Ken Burns, yeah. So he gave a graduation speech at Brandeis University, and he, it's floating around, social media now, and it's really smart. He's really smart and very thoughtful, and just is drawing from all of the history that he has come to understand doing the shows that he's done over the years. But then at some point, he just launches into this 2-minute attack on Trump.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, oh, dude, you didn't need to do that. What you were doing was appealing to so many people. It was just so thoughtful and really smart. But he had to just go there. And I'm like, why'd you have to do that? Like, why? So you just took this beautiful graduation speech and you just ensured that, half of whoever wouldn't watch it, and I'm like, okay. And this is kind of nutty. And this is where we go. We just lose our damn minds.
Yeah, and that's back to what I said is like people feel like they have to take a part of a team. They cannot just let it go. So when you have somebody like Trump or Biden, like we stuck with the two, Biden and Trump, unless you're gonna vote for a libertarian like Noam will.
I am, by the way, I am a registered libertarian. So
yeah, well, I mean,
I'm not voting for Dave Smith, but
I rarely vote. I rarely vote for libertarians because, they're kind of half of what they say is really, really smart, but the other half is so insane and nutty that I'm just like, oh, I can't vote for you. But the half of what you say is brilliant.
Well, let's say just a sidetrack for a quick second. I think you'll agree with me that somehow I actually spoke to Nick Gillespie about this. Somehow the libertarian leadership doesn't really reflect what most libertarians would want. It's somehow hijacked, and by the way, I wasn't taking a swipe at Dave Smith. I was making a joke. But yeah, I think I would vote for a libertarian too if only one of them wasn't batshit crazy, Well, like Reason Magazine is a very reasonable magazine.
Yeah, I subscribed to Reason for 15 years.
Yeah.
But I'd subscribe to The Nation at the same time, right? So the two would come and, it was a really, really fascinating. It really kept me balanced. But yeah, what really smart libertarian would run for government? You know what I mean? Like,
that's right.
Nobody. It's only going to be like the fringe people. So yeah, it becomes.
So when we have options like, Trump and Biden, are they a reflection to the society? Is that, or they came because of that's what society wants?
Well, listen, you really can't understand them without understanding the role of political parties now and how political parties have shifted. And there are these two guys who just put this book out on political parties, two historians. And I listened to them on Ezra Klein's most recent podcast. And I didn't appreciate it because normally I like Ezra Klein. He's really smart, but he was just saying too much. And I really wanted to hear from these guys, but they wrote this, what sounds like a really smart and really thoughtful book about political parties and the Republican Party in particular. And they had such a smart analysis.
What's the name of the book?
I don't even recall the name, but look up the Ezra.
I'll look it up. So what did he say?
Well, the point being that parties have parties are really important because, parties are this mediating force between the populace and the candidates. And so the parties ensure that there's some level of continuity in ideas and practices and laws and policies that politicians are following. And so they become really important. And you can't think about parties, you got to go back, 170 years, 180 years to really sort of see the origin of these parties in the United States and what they represented and why they emerged and so on. And I never did that. I've just never done it. And I realized, oh my God. But the parties are running the show. So I don't think about Trump. I don't think about Biden without actually also thinking about what the infrastructure of the parties.
Oh, look,
hey,
there's somebody behind you.
I'm going to pause right here.
Okay.
And hang on. Let me go put another show and I'll be right back. And
okay.
All right.
So I think
wait, before you start, while you
I started.
That's fine. I meant before you start talking, I found the name of the book you're referring to. I believe this is Dan Schlossman and Sam Rosenfeld.
Yeah.
Two Irish Catholics.
The one guy's name is Sam, so he's a good guy.
The hollow parties, the many pasts and disordered present of the American party politics. Of American party politics. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, it just feels, yes. And it feels like if you really want to understand what's going on in the political system today, especially at that level, I just feel like you got to really understand parties. I mean, they're billion-dollar operations, man. They're just running things.
And Ezra Klein couldn't keep his mouth shut, huh?
Yeah.
That's the way. I agree with you that we talk. So your manner is so equanimous, if that's the word, that I don't even want to say anything negative about anybody. But I'm not. I do think that he's quite bright, but he irks me. That dude irks me, Ezra Klein. Anyway,
well, here's the thing. He's really brilliant. I mean, this guy, he's so smart. Just in this particular, sometimes when he's with one person, I enjoy how he's really involved in the conversation because he's really smart. He's really smart at responding to questions. But in this particular case, because there were two guests and it's so complicated, I just needed to hear more from them. But whatever, I'll listen to them somewhere else. Maybe they'll be on Fresh Air or something like that.
Equanimous is the word.
Are you like trying to upgrade like words that I don't understand? Is that what you're
means? Like he's peaceful and calm and
just say peaceful and calm.
Yeah. Well, no, I think this is actually the precise word. It's so precise the word I wanted that I had to pick it out of something, not even knowing what the word. I knew that's the word. I just didn't have it.
Sam, can I complain to you?
I never said it before.
I've been doing this podcast with Noam for a long time, and I used to, when he say big words, just go along around the podcast, not knowing what it means, and carry it the whole time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, so this is interesting since we don't have any particular place we have to go. I think the Trump phenomenon is quite more a sociological lightning bolt than Biden. Biden is kind of the last gasp of the old world, and Trump, this was his talent. I don't know, I'm trying to think of a better word for it. He knew where a lot of people were at that neither party seemed to be reading them.
Yeah. To awaken the populace, right? To really awaken, and that's that there's this kind of stimulation, right, of large numbers of people, activate them, bring them on board in some way. And there's so much that's happening in the world sociologically in terms of cultural shifts and inequality and the pushback against all of the diversity initiatives. And look, when you see the emergence of Black and brown people and in the queer community and in such a strong and powerful way, I mean, there's evidence, right? So forget about the underlying racism and sexism and homophobia that we can still find and still occurs and so on, right? But there's such a presence of people. And if you're just the average American, especially, in the middle of the country, who has not benefited in a big way from all this globalization that has happened and in the shifting in the entire global economy, but particularly the economy in the United States, if you're one of those people, wow, it just feels like a wave has crashed over the nation, and it's very unsettling. And so, this populism is a way to just come back to, in some ways, rebalance the ship. And it doesn't mean it's based in racism or ethnocentrism or homophobia or anything like that. It's just a rebalancing because there's a whole segment of the population that just has to kind of push back to say, whoa, hang on a second, right? And because not everybody has had the experience over these past 25 and 30 years, experiences in a way that, say, somebody like me has, where I've been able to really be rooted in this complex multicultural world that has emerged in the United States. So I'm not afraid of it. I understand it. I'm following it. I'm understanding it. Hey, Black and brown people in the queer community, they don't have as much power and privilege and wealth and so on as it appears as though they do. But so I get that. So I don't have to really push back against it. So when my workplace and my university or wherever it is, a school system, they're all just hammering away at all of this, diversity work and so on. I can see that, like, okay, well, that's just because, people, how and why that's unfolding in the way that it is. But if I wasn't in a position like mine to see the kinds of things that I do, man, I would feel like this is just being jammed down my throat and really be afraid of it. And probably rightly so. And so somebody coming along who's like a Trump, who is going to be much more appealing to me, not because I'm racist or Trump's racist or any of that. It's just that I got to get this ship rebalanced, my life. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what the future is. So again, I'm trying to say all of this in the most positive of ways because I think that most people are really quite thoughtful most of the time.
Well, I can speak for myself here. I mean, Trump, the man, was somebody I always held in low regard.
Yeah.
I remember hearing him on Howard Stern years ago. The way he talked about dating models was just vulgar and putting down other people. Then when he went after Barack Obama, he claimed to be investigating his birth certificate, and he implied that he had found stuff, and he was obviously lying. I remember saying at the time that this was not the act of a patriot. You don't undermine a sitting president if you're lying. So I have nothing good to say about Trump the man. Trump the movement reverberated with me in many ways. It reverberated in me, first of all, because, and you might understand this because you're probably about my age. I remember when I was a kid, everything great that happened in America. The tallest building was in America. America went to the moon. We aimed high. We took pride. We took happiness in our achievements. And then at some point we began to, take some of the rose-colored glasses off and took a good look at our flaws as well, and that was healthy. And then at some point it began to become, it began to feel like we were supposed to hate ourselves, that we couldn't say anything good about ourselves, and this really bothered me. That's number one. Number two, you couldn't get anything done anymore. Like like I remember as a kid in like maybe it was third, fourth grade, we read an article in class about they're going to build these new buildings, the World Trade Center. And like 3 years later, they were up. Like things
Mhm,
happened. And then
mhm.
after 9/11, it was like 10 years before they even approved a plan or something. They built the Empire State Building in 13 months. They built the Empire State Building in
Yeah,
13 months.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
and then while you're seeing China do all this stuff, and we don't dream to go to the moon anymore. So that all reverberate, make America great again. It didn't strike me as a
Yeah.
as a call to Jim Crow. And then on immigration, now I came, and Hatem knows, he knew my father. I came from a home, not only were they immigrants, but loved America for what it made available to immigrants. I remember when anybody who worked for my father would get a green card. He said, become a citizen, become a citizen. And then he would go to their citizenship thing, and he would just love it. But then at some point, I began to notice that this was no longer a positive for the social fabric. The immigrants of my father's generation that were extremely patriotic. I saw a documentary not long ago. Yasha Heifetz, the famous
Mhm.
violin, would go out every morning and raise an American flag because he was so appreciative to America for taking him. And I would have conversations with my employees. Very, very hateful may not be too strong a word, but definitely not fond of the United States of America. We're here,
Mhm.
but we're here to make money. We don't consider this. And this shook me, not because I don't want them here, but
Mhm,
because I say,
mhm,
well, I don't know how that works. I understood how it works when people left the old country, never to return, and
mhm.
wrap themselves in American flag. Talking a lot, but just this is powerful to me. I found my father's old journal when he was maybe 11 years old, and in those days it'd be again, you remember this, like a little with your name, what grade are
Mhm,
you, who's your hero. My father wrote
mhm,
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
mhm.
Here he is, a brand new immigrant to the United States. Who's there? Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And those days are gone. And that was a formula for success. And I
Yeah.
don't I don't know that things aren't going to work out, but I'm one of these people who doesn't
Yeah.
who is not going to just say, "What's the matter with you? How dare you say that this ground is not holy enough on its own, that everything will work out." I do think that we need to have order at the border. And I do think that it's at least concerning that the
Yeah.
people coming in here as immigrants are coming in here perhaps with a different embrace
Yeah.
of American. So all these things that Trump said, and then of course at the same time the Democrats were saying that we don't even think we want to decriminalize the border. So this was like, whoa, you don't even,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
Biden, but that's why he got
Yeah.
elected, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
so all this reverberated with me, and actually these issues reverberate with me today. I never took him as particularly anti-gay or
uh-huh.
anti-black. Maybe a little like Archie Bunkerish because I knew where he came
Uh-huh.
from and whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
But and again, the man, I can't say enough. I can't say a single good thing about the man. But that general point of view, I find quite a bit of meat on that.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's interesting. All right. Let
I'm
me,
gonna
let me,
add something
Yeah.
to
yeah.
just last Noam of Noam's on immigrants. And then I think because it's a good sociologist question, how the society, because I know what he's saying about, how a lot of immigrants feel patriotic and some don't, and as part of that community, I think a lot of the people, are very feel very part of the country. They feel America. I know I do,
Yes, yeah, I know.
I mean, I am.
I don't mean to say
No, no, no,
100% by
I
any
know,
means,
but
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 maybe a critical mass. But go
no,
ahead.
no, but the interesting part that he's mentioning, those people who just want to go, make money and go back. I also talk to these people, and I find that, which is interesting, is they feel that no matter what they do, they never looked at as Americans. They every time they try
Mm,
to do something, they say, "I am an American." No, you're not. I am this.
mm,
So they never feel home. They
I
never
don't
feel.
buy it. I don't buy it because you think my father's generation was somehow embraced. That's every immigrant community
Well, there's
has
a difference between that, Noam, because back then there was not the transportation wasn't as, oh, I can take a plane or I can go every.
America has never been more hospitable to all walks of life than it is now. What I see it more as, look,
I'm
when
not
you
talking about
left,
America. I'm talking about the
when you
people.
when in the 30s, 40s, 50s, when you left a foreign country, you were gone. You couldn't even make a long distance phone call unless you were
I
wealthy. You
remember
could
that.
not you could not text message. You kissed the ground of America, and you basically had cut the cord whether you wanted to or not. Now you can call for free, you can text message, you can go back and forth. You are not cutting the ties. And I think
Yeah.
cutting the ties were healthy. You
Well,
had
I
you
mean, they
had you
were
had
healthy,
you
but
you you
Yeah.
had to you had to make your you
no,
had to
but
psychologically say, I'm an American now. That's it. This is done.
no,
That's
I understand
gone.
that. It's not what I'm saying. My point is like some of those people, because of these things, the society, I'm not talking about America being welcome. I'm not talking about the laws. I'm talking about as a society. And Sam, you can maybe put into
Yeah,
if
but
they
can I say
don't,
one more thing in that sense? Because I
yeah,
even think what you're saying is even part of it's actually within the ideology that I'm complaining about. They come quite often from places in the world where what you're describing is there a view of America before they ever get here. There
some
is
of them.
um,
Mm.
people who came in the old days came to America thinking America was this holy place. They lionized it. They dreamed
Mm.
it as some, you know, fantastic place of liberty. Like you see the people in Hong Kong waving American flags. This is how they envisage America. The people coming now from God, just speaking honestly, from more third world mentalities, they have been raised from birth being taught that America is the force for bad in the world. And maybe they're right. That's really not the point, whether they're right. The point is what kind of social fabric does then can then be created from that. And the things that you're saying are the things that they came here believing about America because that's what they hear about America at home. Racist,
But
not.
that's not,
Well, that's what I
that's,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, Sam, what do you think? Because from my
Oh
experience, yes, of
man, I
course,
got a
there's a
list
part
of.
that Noam say it talking about, but I feel
I,
the
Of course.
majority are so proud to be here. Like I know all my friends. I have somebody just got their green card and is like, and applying for Senate. It's like, I hope I can vote soon. You know, voting is a
yeah,
big deal in
yeah,
the Middle
man.
East
Yeah,
because we haven't voted for
yeah,
35 years. Only once every 35 years in the Middle
yeah,
East to vote. But
yeah.
and it's between the president and God. Get it?
Yeah,
Unless he
yeah.
dies, he's not gonna.
You
So
know, okay,
yeah,
so I think I can do what I typically do, which is kind of weave a thread through all of this and see some truth in lots of different things. But before I take off, I'm going to hit pause one more time and I'm going to put on one more
Okay, go
video and
ahead.
I'll be right back. And this will give me
Go
some
ahead.
time to put my thoughts.
no problem. And we're gonna continue recording until he comes back. But yeah, I see. It's interesting what you're saying. No, but do you feel that it's also the same with the new generation American? Like I agree with you that like so many Americans like, oh, they attack in the country, they attack, and they don't see how much this country gave us all. It's
I know,
crazy.
but we know some of the same people. The stuff that comes out of their mouths
No, I
is
understand. I
is
remember
so
Yoshi. You're talking about Yoshi and no,
is so shocking for people who are here actually doing well.
yeah. I
Um,
know. I always tell you a story of
hopefully,
this.
when they all have kids, it'll everything comes out in the wash. That's what we have to hope.
Yeah, I just think that a lot of people, at least that I know, that are very, very patriotic. But I know exactly what you said because I told you the story before. I have a friend of mine who was very kind of famous here and there, activist, and then he came here pursuing as a political asylum. And once he got his citizenship, he started attacking here because now he's protected. So it's so crazy to me. Is like you love what America stands for, yet you want to attack it. It's two different things. Of course, we do a lot of things wrong as a country and as a nation, and you should place your opinion and stand up when it's wrong. But when you're attacking around everything and just not appreciating, go live somewhere else. I wanna. Did you really have Manny's journal? Did you
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
want
We
to?
think I'm making it up. Yeah.
No, no, I'm saying, did you actually read it? I would be hesitant.
Oh no, it doesn't really. There's not much in there. It's just
Noam is not my son. I will never tell him that.
no. It's funny. He's a little boy. A little boy.
Oh yeah. But yeah, what do you oh, here you go. Sam is back.
Okay. Are we recording again? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So here's I have a couple of thoughts. You know, one is the, the technology has changed the nature of immigration all over the world. So immigrants, people who travel, who live abroad for long periods of time, um, they don't have to integrate and assimilate in the way that they used to have to. It's very easy to, uh, I go to Korea. I don't, Koreans to study English. Some speak much better than others. I've tried to learn. I speak Spanish basically fluently. Um, I've tried to learn some Korean, but it's so difficult. So I just give up, and I'm like, okay, well, you don't really have to, right? And so that just means that it's possible in some ways to remain separated to some degree. Um, and that's happening all over the world. It's not just here in the United States. And so I talked to someone the other day. Speaking of Korea, I'm going to have a conversation with a Korean man who came to the U.S. 25 years ago, and he still doesn't speak English. Like I need to have a translator to have a conversation with this guy. He lives out in L.A. I'm like, how do you not speak English after 25 years? But he doesn't. He doesn't have to. He lives in Koreatown out in L.A. And it's like, okay. Now that has always occurred, right? At the turn of the century, around 1900, there were something like 150 foreign language newspapers in New York City alone. So I remember reading that. I mean, it's just that's kind of the nature of things, right? So that's one. That's really important. I think it is true that many people are kind of coming back and forth, and they don't feel the same kind of allegiance uh, to any nation to where they're migrating in the way that maybe they had to in the past, or maybe they just in a way had to convince themselves, right? Because if you're never going home, if you're coming here by ship and you're not just coming here on a cheap airfare that costs you $1,000 and you can easily get another one and go back home, you have to believe that this place that you're going is going to be your spot where you're going to live, and you believe in it, and you learn, you convince yourself that you love it. And it's not just here in the US. This is happening all around the world with different places. So we have this kind of US exceptionalism kind of thing, as though this is only happening here, and it's not. And so uh, but today we don't have to do that. You kind of come, you go back home, and even in Mexico back in the 60s and early 70s, we had the bracero movement with the Mexicans, with laborers coming back and forth just constantly, and they loved the U.S. because this is where they worked, but then they went back home for 4 months out of the year, I don't know. I just feel like these are sociological factors and forces at play. I don't think human beings really change that much. That we're just following the sociology that shapes our lives. So
I
that
think
would that
I
would
think I think you're absolutely right about the language part. I feel like it's easier for if you can understand, and if you dug deep into the culture, you would be part of it more.
And listen, it's always been true that people came to the U.S. You go back and from the 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s, right? The people came here and never learned English. Like
Yeah.
of course, there were always people like that. I mean, it's just like people travel to other countries and migrate to other countries and learn the language. Um, so I'm not sure. I think there's the there is a way, and people always loved their land back home, right? I mean, there's so many immigrants. I read stories, I watch videos of stories of people who came in the early 1900s or late 1800s, and they were interviewed, and they did, they loved their land back home. They always dreamed of going back home. They loved the United States. They loved being here, but they also loved
I mean,
back
we
home.
have parade the Irish American, the Italian American. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty much, this is a land of immigrants. Every single person came
Yeah.
from somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
So when they declare they proud of something, that doesn't make them not American. But it seems like for a certain group, it might apply, you know.
Well, I think it does apply there are certain groups, I suppose. There are also people who come here. There are always people that came here, and they came here in spite of themselves. They didn't like what the US represented, or they didn't really feel an allegiance here, but they came anyway because they could have opportunities here and work. And so they weren't very patriotic.
Yeah.
Of course, this is the nature of human populations, right? So go back to the early 1900s, I mean, or mid 1900s. I mean, people who really weren't that patriotic, but they came here and they lived here and they paid taxes and they became citizens and so on and so forth. So that has always been true.
Yeah. So
And
let me ask you this about the society, different topic. Three things to discuss quickly. Cancel culture, like
Mhm.
we want to insert conspiracy theories and woke. You know, these three, what reflect, how can we understand them with this, with understanding the society and the human behavior that led to cancel culture, woke, and conspiracy theory? Let's go with cancel culture first.
Yeah. Well, this kind of goes back to the immigration issue. Well, and some of the negativity that we see among people toward, let's say, toward the United States, right? They're emerged out of the 60s and 70s, kind of a way of kind of criticizing or looking back on the United States and on policy and on foreign policy, and just having a critical perspective on it, that in a way that in some ways was a very small segment of the population in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, right? In the first part of the 60s. And so, that's a good thing, right? I mean, it's really good. Have a critique of one's own nation. I mean, there's plenty to critique, I mean, there's a lot always. And so, I think that, so first off, that's a really important part of this, of what I think, Noam, what you were talking about earlier. It's like people just like criticizing or just being like, including immigrants who are, like not feeling all warm and fuzzy about the nation, because they're just able to see certain things that maybe wasn't happening earlier, right? And once again, remember, all of this is, we got all this technology that's showing people, right? Like somebody, coming back from migrating here from the Ottoman Empire, and some rural part of the Ottoman Empire where, some genocide happened that they were part of or knew about. They can come here and talk about it. That's all they can do, right? There's nowhere else where they can really kind of put that out in the world. But now you can do that. And so that's really important that we see that. And it helps to sustain a critical perspective and a kind of a negativity that we really need to understand, and we should honor at some level, because it's people trying to do right. Okay. So now cancel culture. I think that cancel culture is one of these things, once again, it's like the internet, where it's actually pretty small, right? It's a thing that exists more in our minds than anywhere else. So, I have been, people have come after me. I mean, sometimes it's really big. When Tucker Carlson came after me a couple of times on his 8 o'clock news, his segment,
Your mic is off, Noam.
Yeah.
I hate Tucker Carlson. You got to tell us about that, but go ahead.
Yeah.
He hated him post his interview tomorrow.
I've always hated him. I hated him for years.
Yeah. So Tucker Carlson came after you, yeah.
Okay, so that's a different kind of cancel, right? He has a big audience, and so when he tells his followers, "Hey, watch this 12 seconds of this guy in his classroom. Let me tell you what he's saying, what he's doing. I'm like, dude, you can't, that's not at all what was going on, but you've told them now. So I get an email every 8 or 10 seconds and they're all saying the exact same thing, right? Which is basically what he told them to say. That's a different kind of cancellation because that's just like a social movement level cancellation. But I've also had the experience where, someone puts a tweet out and then, like 100 people or 500 people like the tweet and maybe 20 or 30 retweet it. And then it's like, oh my God, you're getting canceled. No, I'm not getting canceled. Like it's not. And just ignore it. And I think the vast majority of attempted cancellations, if people would just ignore it, it would go away. And the ones that we don't ignore are the ones that bust through the media those are the ones that we think about. Well, it's really relatively few. I mean, just in the United States, we have 330 million people. So how many people are getting canceled on any given day? Think about everyone's throwing opinions out all over the world on social media, and everyone's interacting with so many people, just millions and millions and millions of interactions every single day. How many people actually get canceled on a daily basis? Very few. And so the cancel culture is once again more of a mindset than it is actual behavior by the people in this particular population or any population anywhere, actually. So I think I want to say that. That's how I would understand cancel culture. What do you think about that, by the way? I've never said that before. So, oh my God, all right. I just came up with that sitting here.
I think cancel culture, having been through it, I think it's more serious than what you're saying, although you may not disagree with me. It's not so much that some huge number of people's lives were ruined, although some people's lives were ruined. It's the fact that the self-censorship that descended on hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah. Myself, I censor
all of us was it so oppressive and cancerous to a free society.
Yeah.
And I think it was I hope
okay. Well, here
now. Yeah.
Well, first, let me respond to that. First, much of that is a good thing, right? I don't need to say like just earlier this morning. A buddy of mine sent me. We have been going back and forth on Borat, or what's his name? Who's the guy that does Borat?
Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yes, yeah. So he had this thing that he did. He was doing little skits, and he went to these day laborers, and he picked a bunch of guys. I put him in the back of a pickup truck, and then he was like driving over these speed bumps and so on and so forth. And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to hire you for the day," just being a real jerk, And then he pulls up to the immigration office, and of course they all get out and they run, And he's laughing, and I'm like, "Man, first off, that's mean. It's stupid. It's not even funny. It's mean." And who would do that? And if he did that today, I would hope he would so-called, what I wrote is I hope he would get canceled, probably, people on the left. And he should be canceled. Like, that's dumb. Like, not canceled, but like, don't do that. Like, that's just dumb. Like, it's mean. It's just, God. So some of the cancellations, as it would be, are people really saying, hey, these extreme things over here out around, like, stop doing that stuff, man, because that's just not cool. It's really not cool. And so like, okay, that's a piece, that's a segment of it. Okay. And I wind myself back. First off, I used to do stand-up comedy when I was an undergraduate. And so I have a natural inclination to get behind a microphone and to tell jokes, but I don't do that anymore in class, because almost every time I tell a joke, there's a piece to it that my students don't understand. They're not ready for it. So I've just because I've stopped doing it. When I let it slip and it comes out, they're like, hey, you're not supposed to be telling jokes. And then somebody gets really offended. Nobody got offended 15 years ago. Man, it was like sometimes my classroom, I'd be on a roll and it was like a stand-up comedy club, but that doesn't happen anymore. So, okay, okay, well, whatever. That's all right. It's
No, I think you're just trying to I understand where you're coming
I'm
from.
trying to justify it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no, you're finding the silver linings, and of course there's silver linings. Of course that the
Yeah.
fact that you can hear some old Eddie Murphy routine about gays
Yeah.
and see how harsh it is, and imagine that gays, a sizable segment of our population
Yeah.
had to live in a world where this was perfectly acceptable, and say, well, some good things have happened. Absolutely. I don't know
Yeah.
whether
Yeah. Yeah.
cancel culture was necessary for us to progress to more sensitivity, but you know, no,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this podcast. I've had really good faith. I can't even say their names, but like intellectual people, heroes of moderate people who would like, the mic's not on, is it? Like I'd ask, like they just want to know the
Yeah.
mic's off
Yeah.
before they
Yeah.
give me a
Yeah.
more frank answer. I've spoken to editors of important magazines
Yeah.
who will say things that they would never allowed written in to be written in their magazines. We had
Okay, but listen,
let me say
but
what. Let me just say one other thing. And one of the stupidest things, you had people like my friend Mike Pesca. You had the situation where Don McNeil, is that his name? Is that his first name? Don. Yeah, McNeil at the Times was fired for repeating the N word in a conversation with somebody who said the N word to him.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody even claimed it was using it or wielding it or
Yeah, no, that's right. Or
just
like
repeating it.
what's his name for Papa John's? He got the
Yeah.
whole cancellation with him was the same thing. He was,
But
yeah,
so then this story comes out. McNeil is fired. And the reason I get, by the way, in case he's listening, I was thinking Don McLean, the guy who sang American Pie. So I always think I'm getting it wrong, but
yeah,
Donald McNeil. So then Mike Pesca, who worked at Slate Magazine, in a Slack channel among journalists and people who work in journalism, said, well, I think perhaps it's okay in certain circumstances to repeat the word or whatever he said. And he got fired for that.
yeah,
He didn't
yeah.
actually repeat the word. He got fired for thinking that it's okay to repeat the word. So this is, and this is in elite institutions.
Okay, well,
This is
listen.
all too much. All too much. Yeah.
Okay, but that's not cancel culture. Okay, that's a
Oh yeah,
side
it
of
is.
cancel culture of people who are the adults in the room who are unwilling to say, hang on a second, I'm the adult here. That's not happening.
Absolutely.
You need to go get a life. And so, but what's happening, what I see around me often is like, hey, I have something, all the time that, not all the time, but some student or somebody will complain. Um, and I'll say, well, hang on a second, that's not offensive. Okay. Like I teach the largest race course in the world. I've been doing this for 35 years. I'm like, talking with people all over the world. I think I'm the kind of guy that you want to come to and say, hey, what currently is and is not offensive? Give us a reasonable perspective on here. So come to me on it. So now I'm going to tell you that's not offensive. But the fear that it could be perceived as offensive by other people means that I got to be brought in line somehow, even though it's not offensive. So this is a problem, but the problem is other people in power who are just unwilling to be the adults in the room and just say, no, we're just not, that's not it. And we're going to just ignore
I
it.
agree with you
I
1,000%. And this is because of Twitter. I mean, the
Yeah.
additional layer to everything you're saying, which I think is 100% true. I think this is what you're saying, is that very few people actually believed it anyway. The corporations that were firing people
Yeah,
weren't
yeah,
actually
yeah.
offended. The
Yeah.
people, no, it was all like I used to compare it to the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. It's just
Yeah.
like the wizard
Yeah.
projects himself as this huge specter of to be feared, but actually nobody actually believes this stuff.
No,
Yeah, but
nobody does.
yeah,
And this is the problem, right? And this is where we've sort of lost our minds. And this is where somebody like Trump is just take a page from this guy's playbook. He's just like he just ignores it and moves
yeah.
on. And then the little dogs are like behind him, like nipping at his heels while he's walking away. But he's walking away, and those little dogs are never going to catch up to him, and it doesn't really
And
matter.
that's one of the mistakes that the Democrat do, that they stick with little things versus
Yeah.
focusing on truth. I think cancel
And and
culture.
and by the way, just say, and Trump, just so he shows, many of the things that people complain that he said, I think are not offensive, but he has actually said and tweeted actually offensive things, even by my
Oh
standards.
yeah.
But go ahead. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah. They
Go
didn't
ahead.
even
I,
offend me. It's really
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
offend me.
I,
But
I,
like even
I think
yeah.
cancel culture is also a tool that people can fight what they don't like personally. So if you disagree with
Exactly.
someone, it's a tool. It's like, hey, and it became tool to promote yourself. Also, I see that a lot with comedians now, tool to promote yourself that you are edgy. It's like, I'm gonna get canceled. So that term is becoming like you're giving power to someone, and then it's kind of game now. But like you said, like do what you do and then move. Isn't it awesome that Elon Musk paid billions and we still call it Twitter? Like you think he's gonna be uh,
Yeah. See, he'd
uh,
like to cancel us. You know what I mean?
I can't say
Okay, so here's one other thing I want to throw in here really fast. A thought I had. You couldn't cancel people 20 years ago because what are you going to do? Like, I mean, you just really can't. Nobody, it's going to stay localized in a particular organization, right? Well, now there's so many people who are voicing opinions, and there's so many journalists who are just looking for some kind of a story, looking for some kind of a problem, anything at all that they can write a story that they'll get 1,000 people to read it in some magazine and maybe get paid $2,000 for it or something, and anybody can be a journalist. And so I think that's also kind of what's going on in this world of cancel culture. Me, by the way, I ignore stuff. I don't read comments on the stream. My main video editor, Jeff, that's his job. Watch the videos, see what's going on, see what people are saying. Sometimes people will attack one of the student volunteers, and we'll just realize, oh, hang on, man, just the way that person said that, we didn't anticipate that it was going to be seen that way. And then we'll go in and we'll cut out that little like 3 or 4 seconds or something like that, because we just don't want that kind of negativity.
The hassle. Yeah.
But we don't, but I ignore, I don't respond. People often ask me, well, what do you do with negative comments? And first off, I don't see any comments. So,
Yeah.
and our like ratio is like 95.8 to 4.2, which is pretty cool. Like if you're going to hit the like or dislike button, 95.8% of the times you hit the like. And I'm like, well, you can't beat that. Why am I going to pay attention to the 5%? Like, I don't, why
Well,
would I
look,
do?
Joe Rogan was not caught, but it emerged that he had said the N word. And not only that, he made a joke about seeing Planet of the Apes in a black neighborhood and compared the neighborhoods to Planet of the Apes, right? And people freaked out. Spotify or performed to freak out, and Spotify didn't do a damn thing about it. And the storm just passed. He apologized, a sincere apology, I thought.
Yeah.
But nobody even remembers that about Joe Rogan. It
Yeah.
hasn't even stuck
Yeah.
to his reputation. It was just
Yeah.
But if he'd been working somewhere else on NBC or something, they would have fired him. He would have been
Yeah.
stained. And then he's stigmatized. So then, if you like Joe Rogan or you like that, so this was a good demonstration. Similarly, Shane Gillis got fired from SNL because something emerged where he did an Asian accent or something, as if Asian accents don't exist. And now 2 years later or 3 years later, they had him hosting SNL.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
nobody actually thought the guy hates Asian people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to add to your point, the key
So stupid.
Yeah, 2 things. One, you only get canceled if you're kind of successful or getting there. So that's a good sign. And the other thing is like, yeah, you should reflect and see if this is right and apologize.
That's
But
not true, Hatem.
Huh?
That's not true. We had an Arabic family was canceled because their daughter, a guy who sold hummus,
I
their
remember.
daughter, remember the daughter had tweeted some anti-Semitic stuff or something, or 16, 15, 16, she didn't, and people started boycotting his hummus company. Remember, I offered to buy the hummus. You remember this?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. No, but I mean, the third and most important thing is you need to keep moving. You need to keep working, because if we, speaking of like what you did about Joe Rogan, if you versus the actor that I forgot his name that did Kramer, he just released a book recently, a couple of weeks ago.
Michael Richards.
He just released a book. You should see him in the View.
Who actually went on a racist rant. By the way.
Yeah, he did.
Well,
And
hang on a second. I saw that differently, by the way.
Oh, yeah, good. Let's hear. Yeah.
he was not a stand-up comedian. That wasn't his shtick. He had never spent time on the stage, significant amount of time on the stage. And you gotta really spend a lot of time to get up there, because when you start bombing, or when people start heckling you, man, you gotta really know where you're going. So these stand-ups, they've got their routine includes dealing with hecklers, and so he starts getting heckled. He tries to take this route of dropping the N-bomb on this people and making this thing that he calls calling out the person, right? He tries to do this as in a comedic way. It just fails. It just didn't work. But he didn't have enough experience to know that, like, hey, that wasn't going to work right there. It might have worked somewhere else, but it didn't work right there. And there's just not, I have other people disagree. I'm like, there's just no way that guy is.
Yeah, actually, this is exactly what he said in the interview. He was trying to go lower. He was embarrassed. He didn't know how to respond.
He didn't know.
But
Yeah.
but he did go. And all right, let's go to conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Why do people believe in conspiracy theories? I mean, some of them are legit, like we've never walked in the moon. I know that. The Earth is not flat. That's scientifically proven, right?
Paul is dead.
So
You know-
why as a society, or human behavior, have the need to create conspiracy theories, or is it a safe place for your mind?
Yeah.
I like the way
No-
that sounds. That's kind of
No
smart.
one has ever asked me this question, so this
Safe
is
place
this-
for your mind.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I think it's human curiosity.
So you have Q&A for 35 years, and I ask you the first question that never been asked before.
I've
Give myself-
never been asked this.
Yeah, I
ever.
like to give myself credit because nobody,
Yeah,
Noam
yeah.
never ever gave me credit, so I'm just giving it to
Well,
myself.
let's see how well I do answering it, though. I think that, first off, the world's incredibly complex. Okay. Most of us know a tiny hairline fraction of what we need to know to be able to say that we're fairly knowledgeable about life. Okay. So just in the field, my area of sociology. Okay. So I'm a generalist very much. So I'm talking about, things all over the world and all aspects of sociology, which means that I am barely on the surface, right? The ocean that I'm swimming in is thousands of feet deep, and I'm in the top, 1 or 2 inches, right? So it's very complex. We want to bring some kind of order to it. When we hear something, there's something satisfying about just believing that something is true that nobody else knows about. Okay. Like, I just discovered this thing. Check this out. And I know about it, and you don't know, or other people don't know. And I'm special in that way. Right. So I think that fuels I'm spinning. I'm like see how my mind works. I'm sort of jumping around. So that's one thing, to feel like we finally got our hands on some kind of truth. We wrapped our thoughts around some kind of truth that other people don't really know and don't really understand, so that we can feel good about that. Well, that makes sense, right? This is what we want to know. Just like when I understand, something about Newtonian physics that I really didn't comprehend before, and then one day I read something, I'm like, oh, damn, that's what that is. And then I feel good about it. And then I can feel good about, wow, I know this, and other people around me don't know this, right? So I think that's a big part of conspiracy theories, of being able to tap into something that is true and that other people are blind to. And then we can somehow feel a little bit special. I think that's just a huge part of it.
No,
And
thoughts?
it doesn't, and anything can be true, right? Because there's so much that we don't know. And then, when people have these tropes, the government's always lying to you. It's like, no, it's not. The government, the government's always trying to do this, or the government. Well, first off, who's the government? And secondly, have you ever talked to anybody inside the government? I've actually had the opportunity to speak to people, or like to know people personally who are really high up, let's say in the State Department. So I have a conversation with them, and drinking a beer, and be like, all right, tell me what went on when this happened. Oh, when that happened, here, let me tell you this. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me as a sociologist. Of course, life is pretty boring in most occupations, and people are just like struggling to move on. So there's nothing conspiratorial about any of this, right? It just is people just trying to make things work. But when we have those tropes that say like, oh, the government's always lying to us, well, that's just lazy thinking, and it's laziness. Because you're not defining lying, and you're not defining the government, and you're not defining always, right? So when we live with those things, it's really easy to grab onto things like conspiracy theories and not think it through. Like the moon landing. Y'all, man, do you know how many people would have had to been involved to fake the moon landing, and that nobody talked and nothing ever got out about that? I mean, yeah, I can't even tell a secret to like a monk who's secluded in a cave in India and be certain that that secret is secure, and that in that cave, like it's not going to escape around the world, and that we're somehow going to, people are going to fake the moon landing, and like it's all, and maybe they did, but as a sociologist, I'm thinking that's going to be a pretty tough task.
Trump couldn't even have a one-on-one relationship with a porn star and keep it a secret.
Yeah, and Clinton couldn't get oral sex in the Oval Office, you know what I mean, without it getting out. So I imagine all sorts of
And this
other
is
things
why I
happening.
know, because Trump cannot keep a secret. This is how I know that there is aliens outside. You know why?
Right.
Because the first thing he did is make a space force, add a space force as soon as he went to the White House. So you know he read about aliens. I was like, fuck, I'm gonna be the
Yeah.
first one to do that. All right, last.
So wait, I want to say about conspiracy theories because I
Sure.
have a much darker. I don't necessarily know that I have any particular disagreement, but the whole issue concerns me deeply. I think that ignorance obviously is the friend of conspiracy theories. So certain
Yeah, for sure.
certain cultures are breeding grounds for conspiracy theories, as Hatem will tell you. You know, like certain parts of the Arabic world, you know, they're fed a lot of conspiracy theories about Israel and the Mossad and whatever. So that's one element of it. Then there are the people that I can't give the passive ignorance to, like Tucker Carlson, who spreads every
Yeah.
flimsy conspiracy theory with no evidence.
Yeah, but he's worth tens of millions of dollars, and that's where he made his money from doing
But
that.
so I get, and I think many of these people, like Tucker Carlson, like Brett Weinstein, like other people, I actually believe they might have some mental illness. I actually
Yeah.
don't think Tucker Carlson is like Joaquin Phoenix doing deep fake. When Tucker Carlson says he believes that the United States government is covering up for spiritual, supernatural aliens that represent Satan and kill people in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
America, I
Yeah.
believe he believes that. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
then when
yeah.
he talks about bioweapons labs in Ukraine and all sorts of vaccine craziness, which then gets compounded by the fact that some vaccine stuff, you know, is some of the anti-vax arguments have been true. Some of the pro-vaccine arguments were knowingly exaggerated. But you know, this is food for all conspiracy theorists, that there are always elements of truth that you can discover or facts that don't make sense, and they make mountains out of these molehills. But you know, I'm sure there are certain facts about the 9/11 thing that nobody really understands. How did that happen? You know, things happen, but
Well,
obviously it was so. But then I just want to make one other point, a parochial point, is that anti-Semitism is at heart a conspiracy theory.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've been saying that
so
for years.
That's totally rooted in
yeah, it is the
conspiratorial.
ultimate example of how dangerous conspiracy theories can be. It is literally in every form and every place it has ever reared its ugly head, been a
Yeah.
conspiracy theory in one direction or another. So these are quite serious, and that's one of the reasons I'm so repulsed by people like Tucker Carlson, is the
Well,
spreading
yeah, you know,
conspiracies.
anti-Semitic, you think back, you know, to the 1300s, 1400s, and the idea that Jews are stealing babies and drinking the blood, right? That kind of stuff that was pretty popular in the institutional church in Europe. I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. But well, here's a thought. You know, you're right. It's rooted in a certain level of ignorance, but let's just take science ignorance, right? Like, okay, I happen to have studied a little bit about microchips and nanochips and like, and not a lot. I mean, but you know, I read everything that comes across because I'm just curious about it, right? But I study enough to know that like, hey, you're not going to be able to put a nanochip inside of a vaccine and it's going to go through the needle and into our blood. Like you're just not going to do that, right? But that's because I've read, and then I got online and I looked at the size of nanochips and I compared them to, you know, everything. And I'm like, oh man, look how small these things are, right? So when someone comes along and says, hey, you know, they're putting those chips inside there and they're trying to control us. For me, I'm just like, listen, that's insane. That's not happening. But if I didn't know that, if I hadn't, all I'm hearing through the wind is like, whoa, we're making these microchips so small. They're like as small as cells, you know, something like that. Because somebody says that on Facebook and like, oh my God. So that's the ignorance. It allows us to believe something like that. And there's nothing like, once again, feeling special because you've learned something that other people don't know. And so conspiracy thinking is built around the feeling of specialness. Like I've discovered this and you haven't, and I'm therefore better than you. And
I guess that's one element. There's probably no one thing, but it's also I believe something people resort to explain their own lot in life beyond their own
totally,
deficiencies, right?
totally. Yeah.
One of the
Yeah,
things I've
totally.
noticed, it's totally sort of unrelated to this, but it's very adjacent, and it's of all the people I've known in my life who told me they've gotten fired or let go,
Mhm.
not one has told me they deserved it.
Yeah. Dude,
Right?
that's the same with my students. Their roommate is always the bad roommate. And then I
Yes.
say, like, wait, which ones of you are the bad roommate that your roommate is talking about?
So it just shows how human nature is, you know. So when you don't succeed in life, it
Yeah,
always
yeah,
has
yeah.
to be for something. And if many people
Yeah.
that you've gotten in your mind the shit end of the stick from turn out to be the same color or the same race or whatever it is, then it's very easy to attribute it to those people.
So here, let me give you just a kind of a story on that, right? So, you know, when COVID hit, you know, my wife and I, like we're surrounded. We know a lot of really, really smart people and people who have been studying these issues. And it just happens to be, you know, I mean, we're at a university that's, you know, a big research school. So we know, and then we know people around the world and we're like trying to figure it out. Like, I don't want to defend the Chinese or blame the Chinese, or I don't want to support Fauci or not support Fauci. I have no idea. Like I just want to figure this out. You know, what's going on, right? This thing could be really bad. Maybe it's not so bad, but I don't know. I'm doing my best. I'm starting with a blank slate and I'm just working at it, right? And my wife's infinitely smarter than I am. And so we're both just doing our best, right? And we both feel like, hey, our lives might depend on us really understanding what truly is happening, not following anything, but really understand what's truly happening. Okay, so in the early stages of this, I'm on Facebook still. I got kicked off of Facebook because somebody hacked my Facebook account and posted something. I have no idea, and I've never gotten back on. But I was watching these people who I grew up with who had gone to the dark side, so to speak, right? And there's just like immediately this is the government trying to take control and one thing after another. And I'm just like, wait, hang on a second here. I'm really studying this very carefully. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong, but there are a couple things that you're saying that I can absolutely say is not really true, right? And this one person at some point they respond to me, right? People are arguing with me, but I'm just trying to get to the truth. But they say, I say, look, I don't know what you're doing with your time right now, but I'm spending about 30 hours a week doing nothing but reading about this stuff on top of the fact that my whole life I've spent investigating things. So like, I just want to tell you there are a couple of things. So this one person writes back and says, hey, but not all of us have have PhDs, have experience doing research, or have the time to study things like you do, right? And I said, exactly. That's exactly why you should listen to me. You know what I mean? Not that I have the truth, but my God, don't go down the rabbit hole. Like, just like back off a little bit.
I know
And I
that,
wasn't,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that's
So we can come full circle on that, and then we probably have to end. But it just popped into my head that when the BLM riots happened, after being told we couldn't leave our houses, and people literally couldn't go to the funerals of their own parents,
yeah.
the PhD set, not you, but the experts, told us, no, 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 racism is an equally important public health issue. Go out and protest. It's fine.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
saw, that's the best example I can think of. We saw that the experts have no more
They
steel.
fueled it. They
have
threw
no, but
gasoline on the fire.
they have no more steel than the rest of us when it comes to standing up to peer pressure. And
Well, here,
you know,
let me go ahead. And then
no,
I
so,
want
so obviously they had to know. Science magazine had to know that what they were saying was crazy. There were editorials. When Scientific American says that there's no such thing as gender difference, gender differences or whatever it is, we know, or the debacle that's swept the Western world about gender affirming care for minors, whatever it is. We saw the people that we really depended on to be skeptical and tell us the truth, even if the truth meant we just don't know enough yet. Without regard to what the politics was or who would call them names, we saw them buckle. And I don't know how we make our way back from that. It was disconcerting.
Okay, so here, let me weigh in on this as someone who's inside the academy. The vast majority of academics are really just trying to figure stuff out in the same way that my wife and I were trying to figure out COVID. They're really thoughtful. They're trying to be as smart as they can be. They're not really trying to be activists. They're just, a lot of people are just really stuck in their own lane. They're just busy doing their own little bit of research. So if you get them outside that lane, they get lost. But most people, they're really trying to do the right thing. The ones you hear about, this goes back to the cancel culture, right? Not that many people get canceled on any given day or week. Well, not that many academics are screaming like kind of nutty things from the pulpit, right? The vast majority of the academics are being really thoughtful, and they're trying to like get to truth. And so when George Floyd was killed, the most people around me were not jumping on social media. We're not jumping into the throwing fuel on the fire. They were actually going like, wait, hang on a sec. Let's really look at this. Like, what happened? The tape is this. The tape is, it looks a certain way, but and so that's really important for people to know that the academy is filled with people who are just trying to get to the truth. And it's not filled with people who are on all of these kinds of things throwing gasoline on the fire. Anybody who studies gender is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yo, you activists are like, yo, that's going a little bit too far right there, right? But the activists are the ones whose voices get put out there. But the academics who've been thinking about this for 20, 30, or 40 years are going like, whoa, 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 that's not. But their voices, they're not going to be on social media, and they're not going to be on Facebook, and they're not going to be in all these places because they're not doing that. And
the other thing is, like, I think with conspiracy theories, like, if you believe one conspiracy theory, I think you're okay. But usually, whoever believes one conspiracy theory believes all of them. And that's what I meant by the human behavior is, just to, bring it back. It gets you back there, like this is your personality. You kind of want to always question something. I don't know. But I think usually they believe in all of them, so.
Yeah. You believe it more than one. Well, listen, this is one of the reasons people enjoy watching my class videos, because say, for example, in the gender issue, right? So I bring a couple of students up who identify as non-binary, and I have a conversation with them, right? I'm like, okay, so this is it. So what do you think is gender real? Is this that? And you find out, and these students always are really thoughtful. It's like,
Oh, absolutely. The transgender people I know are way more reasonable and even old-fashioned than
yeah,
the people who represent them,
yeah, yeah.
Last question, because we cannot, go without talking about this.
I got to go, Hatem. Go
No,
ahead.
you want to stay for this one.
I don't know. Is it about Israel?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Noam is the official spokesperson for Israel, but empathy is the core of sociology. I saw your videos.
Paul Bloom says empathy is the enemy, but go ahead, go ahead. I'm sure you've read that.
But I saw your videos talking about, taking question, which I think it was awesome because I don't see a lot of teachers having that same place, safe place where students.
Was it the unfocusing video where I was just sitting on the table talking, or was I
No,
speaking
the
with
one you're
students?
taking Q&A from your students. Usually
A
you
Q&A
ask.
from the students. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but you were
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
Q&A for a student. And also
Yeah.
I saw some of the videos about your visit to the settlements, your visit to the
Yeah,
Arabic
yeah.
neighborhood and all that, and
Yeah.
how you saw things. So just your comment on this, but we have to get you back at some point because there's so much to talk about with you. So
You
yeah.
know, it's so difficult. Look, first off, right now, with that unfocusing, by the way, that was 4 days. I was actually in Paris when the attacks happened, and on October 7th. And wow, man, within 24 hours, there were pro-Palestinian protests out at the Eiffel Tower, which is where all the protests happen in Paris. And I'm like, immediately, damn, y'all, like, it's pretty clear that some real terrible things happened here. Like, have you taken a couple minutes to reflect on what Hamas may have done to civilians in Israel? So for me, right away, I was just like, oh my God. But I initially, when I came back, I said, I just got to talk about this. And that's how I did that unfocusing class. I never do that. I never just sit and take questions like that. But many people who are supportive of the Palestinian cause really appreciated it, and people who were supportive of Israel appreciate it. I had people somebody who was at the music festival, and a Jewish person at the music festival, wrote me and said, thank you for that. Thanks for that conversation. Right. I mean, there were so many people. The wife of someone who was an IDF soldier in Gaza at the time said,
Speaking of that, I invite everybody to watch our last episode. Was with the mother of one of the hostages. It was very, very moving. Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, so the issue is Israel, the IDF and Israel and Netanyahu right now. I won't say Israel because Israel is Israel, right? But Netanyahu and certain elements in the IDF, they're not making it very easy right now because just the wanton destruction is just so incredibly tragic. But it is just immensely complex. I'm disturbed by how many people don't know anything about the history, about the conflict. I have never been either to Palestine or to Israel or talked to people on one side or the other who just weigh in on this very, very quickly.
Let me ask you this. I think that if you weighed in something or say your opinion, you should have a background about what's going on. You should have information. But if you want to protest, if your reaction is to killing of civilians,
for sure.
You don't need to have you're reacting to
that's right.
But you should have reacted the same in both incidents.
Well, you could. It's not that you should, and I understand why this happens too, right? Why jump in on this cause? Right? There are lots of causes right now.
So I think more than political, I wanted to ask, like, because we talk about
Hatem, why upset me like this? First of all,
why did I upset you? I didn't even ask the question yet.
First of all, two things I want to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
This stuff really.
What did I say wrong?
I'll tell you in a second. First, I want to take a slight issue with the word wanton, which, as I understand, the word means wonton. He said the wonton destruction, I think, which not wonton soup. I think means sadistic, deliberate cruelty.
I said
And
that.
no, Sam said that.
Oh.
I don't think there's evidence, and I think there's much evidence to the contrary as you really take a dive into it and read what people like John Spencer have written, and read even today.
Yeah.
It was that this is war, not wanton, that it's war. I mean, but anyway, we could debate that. But what bothers me about what you said, Hatem, is that yes, of course, innocent people dying is a tragedy. But innocent people dying in a war, of a justified war, is not the same as what Hamas did. It's I mean, I saw that 47-minute of videos.
Yeah.
They had people, children with their parents, cowering in bomb
Yeah.
shelters, and Hamas just went and threw grenades into it.
Yeah.
Then, while the kids were running around blind, they helped themselves to something in the refrigerator.
You haven't
You
seen
have
any videos of Palestinian children as well?
no, I have not seen any. No, this is what I'm saying. And this is upsetting me that I've seen videos of Palestinian children who were killed.
Yeah.
I have not seen any hand grenades thrown into a classroom of helpless Palestinian children while they're yelling, "God is great," and high-fiving each other and calling home happy with themselves. Daddy, I killed a bunch of Palestinian children.
What is this? What Hamas? You always bring Hamas.
Because these are
Palestinian is different.
because people die of all sorts of things, and we believe in moral lines.
Yeah.
The innocent Germans who died in World War II are a tragedy.
Yeah.
But in some and in some of them may have been, in retrospect, wrong, but could have been avoided. But the world places, by and large, their deaths on the moral souls for eternity of the Nazis, not of the Allies. It is the Nazis that are blamed for what was done to their people.
Because we've done it wrong before, that doesn't mean that we're gonna do that playbook. That doesn't make it okay.
That wasn't wrong. The Nazis are to blame for what was done to their
I'm saying
people.
Killing innocent people.
There is no formula for war without killing innocent people.
Well, how about not invasion of Rafah itself right now? But anyway, I don't want to get with Sam into the political thing. What you opened
the can of worms.
But you know what I'm trying to ask Sam about this specifically is, like, you see people taking one side and not be able to see the other side. Taking teams. When we had the interview with the mom, she was able to see both. A lot of times, as much as me and Noam fight all the time, he's able to see both sides. I'm able to see both sides. But why you see that there's a lot of people doing that? Is that
okay?
Sociology part of
it. So one is because anytime it's like conspiracy theories when you learn about vaccines and nano chips for the first time, you don't really know much about it. It's really easy just to believe they always stick a chip in a syringe and we stick it into people's bodies, right? It's if you're feeling, and we're seeing this movement, especially among young people who are, they're afraid of a lot of things. They're afraid of climate collapse. They're afraid of inequality. They're afraid they're never going to be able to buy a house. They're afraid of all sorts of stuff, right? Well, join a cause, right? This happens to just be a cause. And sometimes it's just because it's like a snowball rolling downhill. It just picks up a lot of momentum. And that's just what it is. I happen to think
why are they not able to see the same pain
because it's too complicated. You just can't. You're just going to jump on. It's like, look, I'm seeing this destruction here. What Hamas did, I have to kind of look for that now. Right. I can, now I don't have to look for it because I can really easily see on any day, destruction in Gaza, but the other I have to look for. And so therefore, I should look for it, and I've made the arguments and that you should look for it, but people don't, and so you just kind of you jump onto this. It's pretty clear. It just seems so clear.
There is
So
no place. There is no place. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to finish your thought. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
yeah, so I think that that's a big part of it. I think that part of the reason that it makes it easy, and I say this all the time, is because in the ether and the Judeo in the Christian, the Abrahamic world, right, of Jews, Christians, Muslims, in the ether is just this fear or dislike of Jewish people. It's just been it's 2,000 year long hatred, and it just there's suspicion. It's just suspicion. So somehow it's just easier to hold Israel and Jewish people in a slightly different place, and for some people in a very different place. And it's just easier to critique this particular conflict. Then, nobody spoke out about the Great War of Africa, in which 5.5 million people died in a matter of just a few short years, right?
I think a lot of people talk about it. It just
there are more Arabs dying in the Arab world during the Gaza war than probably in Gaza.
But I tell you the difference. The United States are directly involved in one war, which is this.
Oh, that's not
that's another reason.
Hatem, okay. That is bullshit. That has nothing to do with it.
How is that bullshit?
Because it's not just in America. Europe does it. Europe is protesting America.
Yeah. No, hang on.
I'm talking about
no, it's not. Let me give you Hatem. Let me give you a way to say that.
You should really retract that. It doesn't hold up.
No,
through the Western world and Australia, they're protesting in the same way.
Yeah. No. Here, let me give you a way to say that, Hatem. That it's perceived, but remember, we're talking about people who the population of people, the vast
Sam, I'm sorry. I have to say one thing, because then I promise I'll shut up.
All right.
We interviewed a mother of the hostages a couple days ago. There is no Western capital that you could post a poster of her son as a hostage where it wouldn't get ripped down. Do not tell me that's because the United States is perceived. Don't say that nonsense.
What are you talking about?
But
what
listen,
nonsense? You want
to say that this is because the United States is involved is just a way to avoid reality.
No, it's
not.
Here,
let Sam answer.
No, but let me just say one thing. What I said is, like you said, why we care about this war and not that war. I said us as American are involved directly in one war. That's why we talk about it more. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's perceived that way. You also have a population, especially of young people, okay, who are against war, right? I mean, they fundamentally are against war. They think that they are, and they're against at least the wars that they know about. They're not against the ones they don't know about. And so this is one in which they can quickly perceive, or people have told them, hey, our country is supporting the Israelis with all their or a great percentage of their military weaponry. And so therefore, we're directly involved, and therefore I can go. And because I have the suspicion of Jews and anyway, and like, okay, so it's the perception of that. It's not that
so you're saying that you as the United States are not involved in the
we are, but
this is such nonsense.
But it's not. But nobody knows how involved we are. These activists,
Sam,
no one knows how involved we are.
You're forgive me. He's my friend. You're engaging with him on a total mirage. Hatem, how many billions of dollars has America aided Saudi Arabia with in their fight in Yemen?
I'm sure
the Houthis
aided.
Yes,
Saudi Arabia.
You don't think America has given military aid and assistance to Saudi Arabia?
I don't know about
this. Is nonsense.
No. So what I'm saying is. No,
the Department of Defense administered. Hold on, I'm reading. The Department of Defense administered at least $54.6 billion in military support to Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates from 2015 through 2021. This is just nonsense that you're saying.
No. Not because you read one article. I don't know what it is. Why is it that you don't want? The United States is involved directly in this war between Israel.
The question was, why do we care about this war, not other wars? We are involved in many wars.
No, that's the question. Why here? Why? What about? So
I think there was when we were involved in Afghanistan. I think there was a lot of protests. I think
we're involved in aiding many horrible wars, much less justifiable than this.
Why don't we, the images coming out of Yemen? I mean, it was mostly the Saudis created a famine in Yemen that was like, oh man, it was 2.5 million people starving to death. I was showing that and talking about that in my class, but the media wasn't picking up on that. Look, so no,
the kids don't care.
both of you.
Yeah.
I think that some of it is the snowball just starts to go downhill. And I watch students, I work with students, I understand, I work with activists, I watch this happen all the time. People just jump on because they want to jump onto a cause. This one in particular, I think the long history of suspicions and dislike of Jewish people and then later Israel, especially on the part of Christians, less on the part of Muslims, by the way. I think it just helps to fuel this. So all of these people, I have so many people who have kind of grown up Christian, but not really Christian, but somewhere in their mind, they drank this water over the years. There's just something about Israel and something about Jews. I can't say what it is, but there's something about, and I think that helps to fuel it. And I think that's
but I think also, no, your mic is off. No,
also intersectionality, which is related to anti-Semitism, but is also not quite anti-Semitism. So, but for whatever,
and also,
hey, by the way,
and also to be fair, what's actually also happening when you see the amount of people dying, women and children.
Yeah, the protest started October 8th.
No, I got it, but yeah. It is pretty disproportionate at this point, and this is what I was trying to get to. And look, I understand why. If the IDF pulls out right now, well, what's the point? You haven't done anything except destroyed Gaza and killed a lot of people. Like, they want to go to the end. I get that. Okay, I use the word wanton, but I won't use that word. I do recognize.
Don't give up to
having have many conversations with Israeli soldiers and officers. I do recognize that now, mind you, I can pick lots of examples out where this is not true in Israel and in the West Bank and in Gaza, but there is a standard. This is an army, and the army is following procedures, and it matters.
What is the result
to the higher ups when civilians are killed?
But the results are, first of all, there's mistreating in the regular day-to-day life.
That's true. Okay, that's true too.
But anyway, I don't want to get into that because I also I have a meeting with my doctor. I have to go in a little bit. But Sam, it's always great to have you. I'm gonna make you. I'm gonna send you some videos so you can.
Don't listen to him, Sam.
No, joking. But thank you so much. This is what I exactly said. He's the kind of friend that you want to have. You can talk about anything. Would love to have you back again. If you ever in New York City, come and hang out with us.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But would you like to?
Do you get to New York?
Yeah, I don't get to New York very often, surprisingly, because I really travel anywhere around the U.S. because I'm always going somewhere abroad. But I know that you guys are in New York, and if you're both there together, we will do something in the same.
How many years have you been in Korea?
I've been studying Korea for 40 years, but I've only went for the first time 2.5 years ago. But I've gone now. I'm leaving in 2 weeks for my 8th trip to Korea. So
I had another career as a musician years ago, and I was the accompanist and musical director for a Korean violinist named Eugene Park Eugene. And I played in Seoul and some concert halls there.
He's actually a good musician, not as good as a debater, but he's a good musician.
All right.
Well, Sam, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, and if you want to share your information where people can follow you, I'm gonna have your website and all that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Send anything, and we'll post this video up on our page, on our YouTube channel also.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Live from America Podcast.